and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
Romelu Lukaku is one of the best forwards in the world. Romelu Lukaku will be in the mix for the Golden Boot. Romelu Lukaku may just about be worth the near £100 million price tag. Wind the clock back about a year, and none of these statements would have been outrageous. But now, the reality is, Lukaku's 21-22 season was a failure, and his time at Chelsea could be coming to a premature end, with a move back to Inter looking likely. But why exactly did Lukaku not pan out at Chelsea? Let's take a look. Finishing has not been the biggest of Lukaku's problems overall. Last season with Inter, he scored 24 goals in the league, which was essentially in line with his expected goals. With Chelsea, he has scored just 8, but again, this was roughly in line with his expected goals. In fact, slightly better. The main problem is he's getting into goal-scoring positions much less often per game due to reasons we'll discuss, and his expected goals per game have dropped from 0.73 to almost half of that. This is because of how he's utilised. Lukaku is incredibly strong and has great pace to boot. So at Inter, under Conte, the side was much more content to sit deep initially, which would draw the opposition backline higher. At this point, Inter were often looking to immediately play Lukaku in behind the high line, so he would then be facing the opposition goal, which he prefers, and naturally this led to much higher quality shot situations. Chelsea on the other hand are much more possession oriented, with almost 60% possession this season compared to Inter's roughly 52% last season. So, Chelsea are much slower and more methodical in their build-up play, meaning that Lukaku spends most of his time watching the play with his back to goal rather than being played in behind. So at Inter, he was getting 0.4 shots directly from counter-attacking situations per game, and at Chelsea this season, that number has halved. So rather than use Lukaku's pace, Chelsea have instead been looking to use his strength by trying to use him as a target man. This is something Lukaku can be great at, but mainly when the ball is played into his feet, where he can use his height and strength to keep himself between the ball and the defender. Lukaku's weakness as a target man is when the ball is played into him aerially and he has to bring it under control, and this is just what Chelsea have been doing more often this season. At Inter, he only contested 3.1 aerials per game, but at Chelsea, this number has risen to 5.53. But Lukaku has found himself frozen out of the first 11 by Havertz, who himself isn't much of a traditional target man. But the difference is, Havertz provides a progression option by dropping deeper into the midfield instead, meaning he is much more involved in the build-up play. At Inter, Lukaku was part of a duo, with both being genuine strikers, whereas at Chelsea he's surrounded by winger or number 10 types. In deeper situations at Inter, Lukaku could come deeper to receive, and crucially, Lautaro was always running in behind him in these situations. Not only could this give Lukaku more room to receive and turn if the centre-backs were wary of this run, it also meant that Lukaku had the option to play the first-time flick pass to Martinez, which he excels at. At Chelsea, his partners don't like to run in behind as much, instead also looking to come towards the ball, thus limiting Lukaku's passing options when he does drop deep. But more likely it means that Lukaku is stuck higher up. So with less runners to play in, Lukaku's key pass and shot creating actions have reduced. And higher up the pitch, because Chelsea are more methodological in their build-up, they are slower to reach the opposition box. This means again the opposition defense is more set, and Lukaku is spending too much time with his back to goal, which is not his strongest suit. The set defense also means he has smaller spaces in which to operate, and Lukaku doesn't have the refined touches in these small spaces. The way Tuchel breaks down these defenses is by having 3 fluid forwards who are all comfortable dropping deep or running in behind. They will consistently switch positions and look to draw centre-backs out of position to create space for the other forwards. Lukaku on the other hand sticks to the middle, making these switching movements of the others less effective, and overall the attack is less effective. At Inter in the front two, they often isolated the centre-backs in 1v1 situations, where Lukaku could then use his strength to turn his man. But at Chelsea there is less isolation, as his fellow attackers are dropping deeper rather than pushing onto a centre-back. Defensive performance is just as big an issue. Tuchel loves for his teams to press high up, last season being the 3rd highest pressers and this season being the 4th highest pressers. Havertz fits better into the system, leading the press from the front, with his 18.6 pressures per game being in the top 14% for a forward. Lukaku, on the other hand, averages just 11.1 pressures per game, putting him in the bottom 17% for forwards, so when Lukaku is on, it also changes the way Chelsea have to defend. But it also has to be acknowledged that aside from systems, Lukaku has also experienced a huge personal regression. One of the major factors that had impressed many is how much he had developed his all-round game at Inter, making him a complete forward. But now many of those traits have disappeared. At Inter, with a runner in behind in Martinez, he had tightened up his link-up play, happy to drop deeper and spread the play, or even turning and playing in Martinez. So he was making more progressive passes and key passes at Inter. But he was also generally getting more touches in deeper areas. He was also much more fluid with his movement, not only dropping deep, but also to the right-hand side like he does under Roberto Martinez, whereas now at Chelsea, he plays in a much more confined, predictable central zone. Interpersonal issues, like his famous interview, haven't helped his cause, and he's also stuck in a negative loop where poor performances lower his confidence, which leads to poorer performances. But these are just a few of the reasons Lukaku's first season hasn't taken off. But what do you think? Drop it down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out.
But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.